Hello everyone, and welcome back to the OurSociety Experiment. In today's candidate conversation, we're lucky enough to be joined with Congressional candidate for the 7th District, Lindsay Brown. Lindsay, why don't you start off our conversation by just telling us a little bit about what brought you to this point in time where you're sitting down with us and what your policies, plans, and vision for the future are.
Okay. So what brought me here today? About a year ago, I decided that I wanted to run for Congress. It was a bit of a journey. It started off with the 2016 primary. In the 2016 primary, I really was tuned into how partisan and divisive the rhetoric around politics has become in our country. And I was getting increasingly upset about it and really feeling like, what can I do as a regular citizen? And of course, you can vote and you can lobby the people who are already in office representing you, but that still didn't feel like enough. And when our current president won the election, I was pretty upset by it, I won't lie. I've since come to find that a lot of the things that I feared about his presidency were more overblown, hyperbolic political rhetoric. And since then, let me back up.
Okay.
So
anything that happens, take a deep breath and just restart from wherever you want to restart.
Okay. So our president won, and at the time I was really, really concerned about the future of politics and our democracy, and that same thread of what can I do as a regular citizen kept coming up, and I kept feeling like no amount of activism, no amount of marching, no amount of calling my congressman was really making a substantial difference. And it's great that we have that kind of activism and that we have people who call our representatives regularly, and we need that to ensure a democracy, but it didn't feel like enough for me. And I kept hearing this statistic that women need to be asked an average of 5 times before they'll consider running for office, which is really just a disappointing and staggering statistic, because on the other side of the coin, we have a democracy that's still run by men, and boys are cultured as they grow up into men to be confident and to wake up and look in the mirror in the morning and say, I could be governor. And girls who grow into women are obviously not being effectively cultured and raised to feel that way still, despite decades and decades of the women's movement, which a lot of people say that's very sad and that's very disappointing, but for me, it really made me angry, because my mom was the kind of mom who did actually raise me to wake up and look in the mirror and say I could be whatever I want to be if I work hard enough. When I was little, I would say, I want to be a nurse, and she'd go, you could be a doctor. And I'd be like, oh, I guess you're right, okay. Which, we need more of that. And as I got more and more angry at that statistic and upset that I didn't feel like my activism was nearly enough, I realized that I could be that change to the statistic, and I could step forward and be the change that I wanted to see in the country and in politics. And so about a year ago, I announced my intention to run, and I've been running ever since.
I really like your intention for running and the motivation behind it. Mm-hmm. What is your professional experience that you're going to kind of draw from should you be elected to this position in Congress?
Yeah, so I am a web developer, and most of my career experience has been as an administrative assistant and then a project manager. Okay. Which a lot of people are like, how does that relate to legislation? And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a social worker, like these are the typical professions that you see people want to get involved in politics and activism. But in my background, primarily as a project manager, a legislator is a project manager, and a project manager is basically creating what amounts to legislation in whatever industry they're in. So I was in the digital media industry, and as a project manager, I was overseeing a team of developers who were building a product, so like a bill or overseeing legislation. And I wasn't just puppet mastering them, I was also communicating with stakeholders on various projects, so upper management who a variety of different personalities with a lot of different motivations and agendas into what needs to happen with the final product. And my job as kind of the middleman there was to make sure that everyone's happy and the best possible product comes out at the end.
Wow, so that really does align with like the political aspect of writing legislation, managing local community projects. Well, you'd be in Congress, it would be more about writing legislation and arguing your perspective for that and moving forward. So that's a really direct transferable skill there.
Yeah.
And do you think that your experience in programming is going to give you kind of some technical insight that some people who, let's say have no technical experience might lack to kind of give insight to where the world is going, so to speak?
Absolutely. So I decided to get into web development because as much as I enjoyed project management and really having my hands on different parts of the project, I also wanted to be able to create the product myself.
Okay.
Because admittedly, I can be a control freak with certain things. I mean, can't we all? And so I didn't just want to tell other people what to do, I also wanted to be able to do it myself and to have that knowledge of what goes into the process. And in terms of bringing that to government, I don't see a lot of technology professionals in government, but it's something that is being legislated on constantly, and it's the future of our economy.
And that's a really great point, Lindsay, because the knowledge economy is the future, right? That is it's the most advanced form of production currently within the U.S. And really across the globe. So to have a more technically affluent Congress would probably be a benefit to the U.S., especially in terms of legislation. Obviously, we've come across a number of challenges that technology presents, and I think that's par for the course, right? It's going to be growing pains. That will probably never go away. New technologies that innovate are always going to disrupt, right? That's part of the nature of innovation. So that is something to really consider, that having a more technical congressional staff, that's a really interesting perspective.